to consider a Cabinet decision on the UK Shared Prosperity Funding Allocations 2025 to 26. First off, do I have any apologies for absence? Okay, and we've had any declarations of interest? Councillor Strong.
I'm not sure whether it's actually relevant, but because we might touch on one of the projects in Caldicot, I have to say that I have facilitated a group on a Friday morning since prior to COVID. Can I say that I have no relationship or friendship with anybody employed at Together Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'd like to say the same, basically, Chair. I don't facilitate, but I do attend the place.
Thank you. Councillor Riley, sorry, you said we have a substitution.
Do we not have a substitution? Councillor Strong?
Of course, yes, we do.
I'm substituting for Maria Stevens.
Councillor Bond.
Declaration of interest. I've been a long-term supporter and volunteer at Together Works, and I know the people there, obviously. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I am just, for the sake of it, we're all clear in our mind, I am just going to go through the reasons for the call-in today. Councillor Butler.
Sorry, I don't know whether I've got a problem in my hand or not. Just to say that I am a member of the community centre and the village hall in Goitra, and we have received grant funding from some of these funds, but that is my relationship.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor. Right, so I'm just going to quickly run through specifically why we are here this morning. So, agenda item 4, resolved that the Cabinet approves the recommendations of Monmouthshire's People and Place Partnership in relation to the investment of funds from the local authority's allocation from 2025-26. It approved the draft local investment plan and projects contained within, and authorised the commencement of activity as outlined in our draft local investment plan from the 1st of April this year, ahead of the regional lead authority, which is Rhondda and Taff, and receiving updated memorandum of understanding from the UK Government regarding the Shared Prosperity Fund. The reasons given for today's call-in are insufficient scrutiny, transparency and accountability as to how projects are identified and evaluated, and the process and criteria against which decisions are made. No apparent assessment of the realisation of benefits as defined in each initial project proposal and where projects are within their life cycle, and little visible assessment of the impact and consideration of mitigation for projects being ceased in the integrated impact assessment or elsewhere. So with those reasons in mind, councillors, can I just request that you really try to focus your questioning and your discussion on those points, because the call-in procedure is very strict, as I have said.
So just for the sort of public's perspective, really, because obviously our meetings are live streamed, when a committee calls in a cabinet decision, and this decision was taken on the 19th of February, it means that the decision has not yet taken effect. So this committee has decided to call in the decision, and what we're applying today is the Council's call-in procedure, which is outlined in our Constitution. So the purpose is to consider the appropriateness of that decision that has been called in by members of Scrutiny, and they've asked for this committee to meet today, and they cannot make a decision itself, but following the Council's call-in procedure, they can either, number one, accept the Cabinet's decision, number two, they could refer the matter back to Cabinet for reconsideration with reasons, or number three, they could refer the matter to Council for consideration with reasons. So the way that this process starts is that we ask the members who requested the decision be called in to speak first, outlining the reasons for calling in the decision. Then the Cabinet member will be able to respond, and then following that, officers may respond. The Chair will then ask the Scrutiny Committee members to comment if they wish to do so, and then there'll be an opportunity for any other elected members after that to ask questions before the committee considers the way forward. When we consider the way forward, only members of the committee will be able to vote on the course of action proposed. So the Chair will now commence the call-in.
Great, thank you. So, Councillor Bond, I believe you are going to speak first.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is about the processes of council, ensuring they produce correct decisions and are robust and transparent for the people of Monmouthshire by utilising the scrutiny process for public fund allocation. So this was raised because Together Works is an example of the decision that's been made, and the information we believe, and I'll share, was wrong and would have been discovered and picked up during scrutiny. So first of all, I want to say loud and clear that Together Works is a wonderful, unique project and space which has brought massive benefits to the people of Caldecott and surrounding areas. I've been a volunteer and a supporter since its conception. Caldecott has a great community, and Together Works is a vital meeting place. This call-in was brought due to the fear that because of this possibly flawed decision process, misrepresenting Together Works' success, it wouldn't have survived beyond 3 months. Only 45,000 was allocated until the publicity of all the letters, impact statements and this action. That raised the terrible unjustified situation. Now, thanks to South East Energy Agency for their donation, Together Works will continue for another year. Ongoing support is needed and is promised from Gavo and MCC to make Together Works a sustainable project.
Councillor Bond, sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
I know that there is a reference in the Cabinet report to potential allocation of revenue funding to Together Works, but it's not really the specific grounds for the call into this meeting.
Okay, it's the example that
I'm going to have to
initiated the need.
Sure, but I am going to have to refer you back to the wording of the grounds for the call in today.
Okay, so I'll share how this is highlighted. We consider it's flawed and ask that the impact on Together Works is assessed and they get support to become sustainable. Councillor Easton will talk about the projects and Councillor Howarth will talk about the ongoing scrutiny and value added. Okay, it was so starting. What initiated all this was the Cabinet members stated that the project's performance in achieving its objectives has led to this withdrawal. MCC have offered support in the past to improve performance, but it's not occurred. So that was questions were asked about that, and that was. We were told that the information wasn't given in the correct format.
Councillor, I'm sorry, I really feel like this is straying from the specific grounds of the call-in.
Okay. It's an example.
I know that you're involved in putting in the call-in, but would you like me to read out the term, the basis for calling again, just for clarity, and then you can have a couple of minutes to assess whether your written contribution is directly relevant to the grounds of the call-in? Would that be helpful?
Okay. I can move on to the fact that in the call-in and the papers that support it, the statements have been made about Together Works, and in the paper that support it, it said that it's to do with performance, that it's unsatisfactory. This is wrong. There are statements there.
Councillor, I'm going to refer you. Okay, I'm going to refer to the document specifically related to this, which is the Cabinet report. The mention of Together Works says £46,289 revenue funding remains unallocated to explore the viability of a transition period for the Together Works project and a future sustainable delivery model. Now, I know there has been some development on funding for Together Works since this Cabinet report, but this call-in, it is not explicitly and specifically for a discussion of Together Works, and if that were the intention, the grounds for the call-in should have been different, but that's not what we're here for this morning. Okay.
Okay, so The issue is that it's been such a short time and things have changed, and as I said, South West Energy Agency has come forward with the money so that it's not now the situation, luckily, that it was. So I just want to say one more thing about Together Works, is all project targets.
Councillor Bond, you've just been asked to refer back to the reasons for the call-in.
Yes.
You've obviously given Together Works as an example, but you can't keep referring back to it. You need to go into your call-in request and actually talk to the reasons for that call-in.
Okay. So if the projects were scrutinised, then it would have been found that all criteria that for Together Works were exceeded, okay, and that the assessment and decision was flawed. So this is why it needs scrutiny. So I'm saying about scrutiny. Let me say that again, all projects and criteria were exceeded. The decision did not take into account the lack of the deprivation in services for the people of Caldicot, all the other decisions, illogical waste of money decisions, and extra housing and everything, and we haven't got even a sustainable leisure centre. So, moving on. The integrated impact assessment does not include any assessment of the proposal to cease projects and the gaps created, for example, Together Works. Only those continuing. My understanding is the integrated impact assessment is to look at the change proposed, not just the positives. If people had not written and spoken out, and it was not raised here, then for example, Together Works would have only had 3 months' pay. Thanks to those people and the kind donation from South East Wales Energy Agency, it can now run for 1 year. And as I say, there's been agreed support ongoing. So the opposite of what is in the report and in the background papers is true. It is a very successful project.
Councillor, you need to not refer to background papers. They're not in the public domain, please.
So I would urge the committee to support the Cabinet acceptance of recommendations, as it is too late to stop, as people's lives will be affected, and Together Works now has a way forward, thanks again to South East Energy Agency, and promise of help. But to also make sure that this process and decisions are scrutinised by Performance and Overview Committee, and all future allocation of public funds are scrutinised, so this error doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Bond. Before I come on to you, Councillor Easton, I believe you're due to speak next, and then you, Councillor Howarth, is that correct? Good. As I have just said, I am going to remind you again, before you speak, please refer back to reasons for the call-in, make your contributions very specific to the grounds, please. Councillor Easton.
Hello, yeah, good morning, everybody. I've read the Cabinet report. I've got the papers in front of me, the ones we can talk about. There are other papers which I would like to talk about, but I'm be restricted by the fact they should be not in the public domain. So I'll stake to the report which came from Cabinet, which illustrated 16 projects moving forward. The project in Caldicot was not part of those 16, it came up later. So I felt all along that this should not be a call-in, this should be a scrutiny. I feel I'm now in a position where I can become
Councillor, I'm not sure that that's quite, you know, what we are where we are. This is a call-in meeting, so I don't think digressing into what this perhaps should have been instead is relevant. No, this is digressing.
And I got to explain my position. I've got a report. I've seen everything the Cabinet put forward. If I was able to express what I needed to do, I'd be going into exempt papers. I don't intend to do that. So at this point in time, I cannot say any more on this call-in, because it shouldn't be a call-in, it should be a scrutiny, and that's the end of my comments. I'll watch the rest of the meeting. I support what Councillor Bond said. this should be accepted fully by the group and accept the cabinet report. But until I'm able to talk about specifics, which are not in the public domain or might eventually, I've got no more to say.
Okay, Councillor, just to comment, I don't feel it's helpful or indeed accurate to keep saying that this is not scrutiny. This is a specific and limited form of scrutiny. There are other ways of scrutinising this decision, as has been mentioned. This could go on the forward work programme for other committees, but I really think we need some clarity for any members of the public who may be watching. I don't want people to feel misled into believing that this is not scrutiny. This is scrutiny.
Well, I don't want to say much more. I've been misled as much. I've been sent papers that I can't use. So I don't want to say any more. I think the cabinet decision should be accepted, and we should move this recommendation moves into scrutiny. I'll watch the rest of the meeting, but I will say no more. Thank you, Chair.
Well, that's your prerogative, Councillor. Councillor Howarth.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members, and good morning to anybody who's viewing. I was actually waiting for a phone call reference to the decision log, which was made the day after, Thursday morning, because actually I was reading the decision log, something I do as a member, and heavily into scrutiny, and actually I was quite taken back what I was reading there, because as a member I wasn't aware that actually what was going on, whether it was my fault, Chair, or anybody else's fault, that I didn't know this Prosperity Fund application process was in the domain at this moment in time. And the reason why is because I do actually check the planners. I come to my meetings, I look at the planners, we discuss planners in scrutiny, and there was nothing on there. And I was taken back then by comments being made and press releases being made about issues revolving around Monmouthshire. So I had a more deeper look into where we were with the aspect of the Prosperity Fund. Yes, we're all well aware things are difficult out there, and we're all well aware that things are going to be cut. But my bigger issue I have with what we do within the Prosperity Fund is the long-term viable future of projects within Monmouthshire. We need a business case for long term. It's all right to start projects, and this has always been one of my bugbears, Chair, within this council, and it be probably within many councils in Wales, is we take grants, we work with grants, and we deliver grants really well. As a council we do, but then when the rug's pulled from under us with grants, we can't continue, or we have to find the money from somewhere. That is the big problem I see with this Prosperity Fund, i.e. the long-term viability of projects. And that's not because of this council, that is because of probably funding from elsewhere, from the UK government, and that's not knocking politics here. Things are difficult. The impact assessments, I'm not happy with what we have within the portfolio when we are fielding the projects. And I believe that we as members should be scrutinising the documents before the project board from this council go to deliver, or we should have some understanding, a better understanding of where we are with these projects. It's only 2 years ago I signed here, and I think it was the last administration applied for funds from the Prosperity Fund or whatever it was called, and I think we're totally rejected on everything. If memory serves me right, there it didn't go down really well. I don't think we had a lot of applications which were successful, or we didn't have much money from that fund. So I am inspired that we've moved forward from that and having our share. I am critical, and it's quite clear in there, insufficient scrutiny and transparency. We as members, we are the sole custodians of this authority. We make the decisions here. We come to chamber, we put our hands up, we make the decision, and I believe that this should have been on the planner, and it's not been on the planner, even to discuss it within the other select, and that's one reason why I called this in, because I felt it should have been there. We should have had knowledge of what was going on here. We're not talking a small amount of money here.
Sorry,
we're
Councillor,
talking a large amount of money.
I'm not stopping you, but just a point of information, so to speak.
Okay.
The Shared Prosperity Fund was on the work planner for which committee? Right, so we did all the scrutiny committees did have sight of this back in June last year, because it was listed as a cabinet decision. That's how I understand this. Is that right? Sorry.
Yeah, okay. We're just to let everybody know, we're very aware of camera issues this morning. We're trying to resolve them, but it's proving difficult. So we were trying to just hope that we could proceed without it. But yes, in terms of the decision that was listed in the Cabinet and Council Planner, I did check when that was added, and it was added back last year in June. So whilst perhaps the wider sort of context that some of you have referred to this morning wasn't perhaps as explicit in the planner. Obviously, the Councillor Griffiths will speak to that in his response, but the actual item, the Shared Prosperity Fund, has been listed on the Cabinet planner since last June.
Could I just follow on from that then, Chair? So if it was listed on the planner from last June, why has nothing ever come back to this council on going forward with what we're putting before the board down in Rondicon and Taff or whatever? So that is one of my queries, where we are with with the cabinet decision log from last week. I'd like to ask as well also the other 9 authorities which are part of the board, how do they handle their setup for discussion with members? Is that done through a scrutiny process, or are they like us? They'll just carry on and put it through? Because I don't believe handling that kind of money delivered from Welsh Government, delivered from the national government.
Sorry, Councillor?
Yes.
I will come back to you for questions, but at the moment I'm just asking the three of you to outline your reasons for the call-in.
Sorry for drifting off.
And just to come back on one of those points, I think, why did this not appear on any of our scrutiny forward work programmes? That's a collective failure of us as councillors, as elected members. Any of us at any time, including myself, any of us could have requested that this went on a scrutiny forward work programme, and none of us did. So that's on us, I'm afraid.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I think that the call-in is valid. I think what it does is it actually raises the bar for officers and for cabinet members to make sure that this council is well aware of the process and the direction that we take with the Prosperity Fund. There is another fund out there which I want to step into as well, which I believe is also needs to come back to council. We're talking large sums of money here. I think this council, during its process of the last few years, has lacked, and decisions are being taken too hastily and too quickly. I think members have the right to be involved, and I think members have the right to have the information supplied to them. Without the requests from the call-in recipients, that actually the document which was sent last week, or the latter end of last week, which is quite a large document, been mentioned by Councillor Bond, would never have been viewed by any member. And I put it down to that kind of process that we're running here. Transparency, openness, we are the decision makers. Let me get this right, 38 of us are also decision makers, as well as the cabinet here, involved in something which is significant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm just going to invite our cabinet member responsible, Councillor Griffiths, to respond at this point. Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks very much, Chair, and if I can thank the Scrutiny Committee for giving time to consider the manner in which decisions relating to the Shared Prosperity Fund are made. and to consider how scrutiny, transparency, accountability may or may not be achieved. What I will try and illustrate, and I won't be talking about any specific project, what I'll try and illustrate is that the arrangements required of this council by the UK government have been fulfilled as required. I will also suggest that those arrangements are not ideal arrangements. I'm not going to defend them. I think that the arrangements have been put in place as they should be, but I don't think they're good arrangements. And I will argue that there is an opportunity in the coming year, across Wales in particular, to make better arrangements, and that should be part of our focus. But I will say that the people who've been working on this within Monmouthshire County Council have fulfilled the requirements set by UK government and fulfilled them well. So before we look at the decisions made by the Partnership Board on the 20th of January this year, and then the subsequent approval, and I'll come back to that word approval, given by the Cabinet on the 19th of February, I think it's worth dwelling on what those required arrangements are, required by the UK government. And for that reason, I probably sensibly have not had time to read it all, but I have circulated the publication. It's there on the UK government website, called the Shared Prosperity Fund Prospectus, which sets out the required arrangements for this fund. The fund was established in 2022. It was the UK government's intended successor to the European Union structural funds. The government arrangements were quite deliberately intended to increase the role of the UK government and limit the role of devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. And I think consequential on that intention to limit the role of the devolved administrations and centralise control, we ended up in the UK, perhaps not intentionally, in limiting the role of local authorities. The first round of funding spanned that period 22 to 25, and just going through some of the history of that. In March 22, the Cabinet received an update of the UK government's Levelling Up white paper, which set out the arrangements required. And it was in March 22, before the last county council election, that approval was given to establish the local partnership to develop the Monmouthshire investment plan and to monitor progress and performance of that investment plan over the funding period. And I've circulated the current membership of the Partnership Board. What's important there, and this was quite deliberate by the UK government, was that the decision-taking body is not the local council. The decision-taking body is the Partnership Board. Now, I wouldn't have designed it that way, but it happens to be the way that the UK government has designed the scheme. And if there is an abscess in the scrutiny process of this council, it could well be because the decision-taking is by the Partnership Board rather than by the Cabinet. The Cabinet is required by our own intention. This isn't in the prospectus. We've set up a mechanism where the decisions of the Partnership Board are put in the public domain as a Cabinet paper, and the Cabinet is invited to approve the decisions of another body. And I think that has led, and I think the point has been well made by councillors, that to an absence of an obvious scrutiny channel is because those arrangements are that the decisions are made by this external body, the Partnership Board. In addition, in July 22, the Cabinet agreed that there would be a lead authority, and this was a requirement of the UK government, and it was a formal agreement that Monmouth County Borough Council would be the lead authority across the 10 authorities of South East Wales. The Cabinet in July 22 endorsed the regional investment plan, which had been submitted to RCT, and an investment plan drawn up by the partnership board. I came to that process quite late. I was elected in May, began attending the partnership board. What I noted, and this is something, again, I think we should learn from, because it keeps happening, that everyone was working with extraordinary haste. The European structural funds had ended, a new regime needed to be put in place, but it was put in place extraordinarily quickly, and decisions were having to be made on allocations in a matter of weeks, when I would far prefer they had taken many months. If they had taken many months, I think there would have been more engagement with communities, there'd been more communication of the opportunities of the fund. Instead, we slip from one form of funding to the next with inordinate haste, and you end up very often rolling forward previous programs rather than scanning widely for new programs. And it is the haste that I saw causing that when I first got elected in 22. I'm not saying the programs were not well chosen. They were chosen according to due process. I'm not saying they weren't good programs, but I am saying that the haste did not allow us to scan widely for the opportunities in our communities. The funding for 25-26, so we've come to the end of that first period, and I've briefly tried to describe the process behind that. Those funding agreements were ending this year, the end of March this year, and what the Chancellor announced last autumn was that the funding for 25-26 would be one-year funding, transitional funding. And again, can you see how we're slipping from that experience of a very hasty process to another hasty process? So an announcement made in the budget in the autumn, no specific figures in it, but funding was going to have to be agreed for the 1 year, 25-26. The reason it's a transitional year, and I want to come back to this, is that the Chancellor recognises a commitment that beyond 25-26, responsibility will revert back to the constituent nations of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. In announcing this transitional year, the Chancellor also announced that the fund would be significantly diminished. We didn't know by how much at that time for Monmouthshire. We had to wait until December the 13th, when the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government made the announcements across the United Kingdom. Funding for Monmouthshire would be cut by 46%. Confirmation of that was received on the 13th of December. That was true almost across Wales. The cut in 3 authorities was less than the 46%. For all others, that was the scale of the cut. That announcement was made on the 13th of December, and by the middle of January, the allocations had to be made with the reduced funding. A month. You can see where I keep coming back to this theme of ridiculous haste in decision-making being required of the process. The partnership board, as I've said, was therefore required to agree a 1-year investment plan for 25-26 in the context of the 46% cut in funding. So in December, again putting the haste onto our partners managing the projects, but we went to our partners and we asked existing SPF projects to submit what was referred to as a single-stage business case. That request went out in December 24. And the business case needed to include a strategic statement, a statement of objectives and benefits, and options analysis, and details of the profiling of delivery arrangements for the 1 year. So if, as a cabinet member, if as a partnership board we felt we're dealing with extraordinary haste, imagine how that was received by our partners. Please submit a business case and do it in 2 weeks. That wasn't our fault. That was the nature of the arrangements that were handed down to us. During December 24, 28 cases, 28 business cases were submitted to the partnership board. And the partnership board then in January, in a period of weeks, had to consider the appraisal of each of those submitted business cases. They considered data on performance resulted from previous funding. The previous projects for the period 22-25 had been asked to submit in a fairly formulaic way a whole series of data against indices that was collated, that was presented to the partnership board. Specific consideration was given to the evidence provided, the answers to the question on what would be the consequence of different levels of funding. What if your funding was dropped by 50%? What was it dropped by 100%? So we had those statements in the business cases. The consequences, the impact assessment of reducing or withdrawing funding was considered by the partnership board. It is more than reasonable for the Scrutiny Committee to ask, and members have already asked, well, to whom is this partnership board accountable? Questions have been framed, how is this partnership board accountable to the council? And my answer is not a pleasant one. I don't think there is a mechanism of accountability to the council. I don't think that mechanism was put in place by the UK government. As I read the prospectus, the partnership board is accountable for its decisions to that group of local government officers employed by RCT. Seems strange, but that's how I read the prospectus. And that group of local government officers in RCT are accountable to a group of UK government civil servants, who are then accountable to Angela Rayner, Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, the first politician formally involved, receiving data for several hundred projects across the United Kingdom. It's if you're concluding that this is not a transparent process, I would concur with that. Now in Monmouthshire, we took our own initiative, because it's not in the prospectus, and created a mechanism whereby the partnership board reports its investment plan to the cabinet. And in doing that, the investment plan is put in the public domain. The cabinet is asked to approve the plan. Now, I'm very pleased that we've done that. It gives some scope for transparency in that the investment plan is there in the public domain. But I do think it's in danger of having led to some confusion in that we recommend to the cabinet that it approves the plan, but it's not clear in the prospectus that the cabinet has the authority not to approve the plan. The plan is devised and agreed by the partnership board and reported to RCT Council. The Scrutiny Committee has called in the cabinet approval of the board's decisions in the investment plan. But again, what I've suggested to you is that the cabinet itself is not clearly the decision taker. The role of cabinet perhaps has been to provide some public scrutiny itself and at least some transparency in putting the investment plan into the public domain. And that is consistent with the prospectus and the expectations of UK government. Once this call-in procedure is concluded, and we can then say there's a concluded decision within Monmouthshire, the investment plan will be submitted to RCT. And it's important that we do get on with that, because we have project teams who need to plan for their project delivery and need to make staffing arrangements. There are a number of projects which will discontinue, and that's never easy, and there are staff involved, and only when we've made a decision within Monmouthshire can those staff be formally informed of their situation. When you come to discuss this, I hope that the Scrutiny Committee shares my conclusion that the governance arrangements for the Shared Prosperity Fund are over-centralised, too much focus on the UK government, they're over-bureaucratic, and they do lack effective procedures for local public scrutiny and local public accountability. So I'm concurring very much with the statements it made in making the call-in. But we do now have a short-term opportunity in Wales to create new and better arrangements. In 26-27, the equivalent of the Shared Prosperity Fund will be devolved once again to the Welsh Government. For 26-27, you know, in the political world we operate, that's next year. It's, in fact, a very short time away. And the Welsh Government has only months to finalise the arrangements for those new grant structures. And we would all want not to have a big rush again. We would want those arrangements to be known well in advance. I think we've only got a matter of months in Wales to sensibly devise and agree some new arrangements. If we get it wrong, if we repeat history, the new arrangements will be scrambled together at the last minute. They'll be scrambled together by some anonymous group of bureaucrats. It will be announced at the last minute, and there will then be another local scramble to identify projects for future funding. So if we repeat the past, we'll go to the line and we'll say, oh heavens, we've got so many hundred thousands, who should we give it to at the last minute? And that's what we don't want. If you get in that situation, I think we'll repeat, the projects will be carried forward simply because there's been no time to engage with local people, local groups, no time for any real innovation. I want us in Wales, this committee and everyone involved, to have higher ambition than that. I want us to try and get it right. And I want us and the Scrutiny Committee to consider arrangements that would work for Monmouthshire. I want Senedd members, Welsh Government ministers to be talking directly to local councillors, local groups, about how we have arrangements which allow for engagement, innovation, accountability and scrutiny, because they're not there at the moment. So I respect this process of call-in. I would ask that the Scrutiny Committee recognises that the Cabinet has done what it has needed to do and that we confirm the difficult decisions that have been made. But I do hope, as you reflect on this call-in meeting, that you consider your work programme as a Scrutiny Committee and find time, because I think it's important in the next few months, to reflect on what's worked and what hasn't worked in recent years, and to engage with Welsh Government and propose to Welsh Government new ways of working which would better serve Monmouthshire and Wales. So I'd like, whatever decision you make this morning, I would like you to take the opportunity to come back to this and consider what would be a better way of working a fund such as this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm sure that both us and Performance and Overview Committee would like to find a way of putting this on our forward work programmes.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Will McLean. I'm the Strategic Director for Learning Skills in the Economy. Having listened to councillors' contributions and to Councillor Griffiths' response, I don't think there's anything that myself or Hannah Jones need to add at the moment, but we'll be happy to come on if there are specifics later in the discussion.
Awesome. Lovely, thank you. And now to you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, officers, and Councillor Griffiths for what I'm looking for, really, because you offered us some reassurance there of why this was called in. I'm already concerned that 2 members of the 3 of the call-in have already showed regret of their call-in and have stated that we should accept the Cabinet decision that was made. But like I said, I'm looking for reassurance. So how confident are we that existing projects still require funding? A question which you've mentioned yourself towards the end. And the money couldn't be spent better elsewhere, but obviously under the allotted prosperity funding headings. I'm getting the distinct impression that this may have been called in due to some concern over where the money is being spent or not being spent in this case. So can you offer us some reassurances that funding is being distributed equally across Monmouthshire and in the most appropriate areas? What work has been carried out to assess the impact? I mean, you did touch on this in your opening speech, and necessity of the currently funded projects since this funding stream commenced. In other words, we're all concerned about has this been properly scrutinised. One other aspect I'm concerned about is about this lead partner of the 10 authorities, in it being Rhondda and Taff, a much different council to Monmouthshire, has a leading role for the delivery of the overall scheme. So how much control does it have, if any, over allocation of funds to certain types of projects? Thank you, Chair.
That I'll take a lead. Often I'll ask Will and Hannah to come in and first, or to complement what I say. But in terms of your last point in particular, the role of RCT Council, I've been reflecting on this. I've been discussing this with others. The general consensus is that the way it's practiced is that it's been in an administrative role. They receive information from the partnership boards. They may challenge it, and they have challenged it in some cases, but I think they would define it as a bureaucratic challenge. Have you filled in the boxes? Is this data tested? They don't pass what you might regard as political choices or political judgment on the information they receive. They receive the information, they check the boxes are filled in, and they forward it to the UK government. I think it's a cumbersome device, which was necessitated by Councillor Edwards and I may come to a different conclusion on this, but by what I would regard as the determination to over-centralise the administration on a UK basis. The UK government said, oh, for heaven's sake, we can't deal with 22 local authorities in that bit called Wales, and we can't deal with every local authority in England, so we will have lead authorities, because it's easier for us to work with a smaller number of authorities. And then you get the confusion. Well, what's the role of the lead and what's the role of the actual local authority? And I think the confusion is still there. It's been resolved by the fact that RCT has performed what I would describe as an administrative role. Your first question, can we be confident that we've allocated to the most appropriate projects? I think if we had a sensible regime, the allocations would be different because we would have had time to scan more widely for new projects. There was no time to do that. So we simply had the 28 proposals, very largely of existing projects, and an assessment was done in a matter of weeks of those projects. I think the best possible job was done in the constraints. Would I have liked it done differently? Yes, I would have done.
Thanks, Councillor Griffiths. I think I would agree with your observations. I think the piece that Rhondda Cannon Taft do is they hold that piece for the 10 local authorities and our interface back into UK central government, and do lots of that sense checking and double back for us, which is a positive thing. And I think certainly the inputs of some of their lead officers help us construct business cases and verify them in a positive way for our projects, because what we don't want to happen is for our projects to become unstuck in their claiming process as well. So I think that is positive. And I think the other point I'd just do, and again, it's only to reiterate what Councillor Griffiths has said, the time frame for decisions, the fact that this is a year extension and a roll-on, did mean that we were severely restricted in our ability to go out to look for new projects. But I would share kind of Councillor Gross's confidence that the work that's been done by the projects, by the teams, has led us to the right decision being taken through to Cabinet on the 19th for their kind of approval at that point in time.
Thank you. Lovely. Right, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to summarise a few things for my own benefit, I think, really, perhaps for those people at home. The reason for this call-in relates to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The mix has changed, is my understanding, between the amount of money that's coming from Welsh Government and from the Westminster Government. We have a new government in place, also because of the withdrawal of the European Fund. Monmouthshire is not the lead authority for the area. That is actually Rhondda Cannon Taft. I'm not clear, though, how, if they are the administrator, if Rhondda Cannon are the interface with Westminster, what mix of funding is being then shared between the 10 local authorities? So that's one thing I'm not sure of. Councillor Griffiths, you explained to us the sorry, I'm just checking my notes. Bear with me. Oh, that's it. Okay. That the cabinet decision was taken last June, but there doesn't seem to have been any scrutiny since then. I do ask why, why none of the chairs of any of the scrutiny committees picked up on it at that point and brought them to their committees, because I think this is the first time actually that any scrutiny has taken place. And then you tell us that cabinet approval was given on the 19th of February. Again, I feel that's without proper scrutiny. And I do understand that it sounds like there was some ridiculous haste around this process, so I am understanding of that. I also understand that Monmouthshire has reduced funding by 46%, which is a massive drop, and that we are in a transitional year. So there are some of the questions really about the transparency of the process, how the partnership board accounts to each council. There's an awful lot lack of forethought, I think, in the whole of this process, and I don't think it's really been helped by a lack of scrutiny by Monmouthshire. But you're telling us that the cabinet has approved it, but the scrutiny is just massively missing. And I think a lot of what we do depends on grant funding within our authority. This has bothered me for quite some time. The projects that we're talking about are those quality of life services that we provide for our residents in Monmouthshire, and they're the ones who ultimately are going to suffer because of these decisions. And I genuinely think the Cabinet has acted unilaterally without take-up by any of the scrutiny committees, and I don't understand why any of the chairs have not put it into their forward work programme. So I think there's a distinct lack in what we've been doing. Thank you.
Just before you come in, Paul, Councillor Butler, I think I'm just going to clarify something that I think is my fault for confusing the issue. No cabinet decision on this was taken in June. It was that it went on to the cabinet's forward work planner in June, and the first decision that they took on this was this one that went through in January. So I'm sorry, I think I may have muddied the waters there.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, if I could confirm what the Chair said there, it went on the Cabinet Work Programme in June because it was then known that the 3-year funding programme was coming to an end and that decisions on future years would have to be made. But although it was put on the Forward Work Programme, no knowledge was had in June of how much money we were going to be dealing with. So it was very difficult to make progress then. And progress really could only start in December when we had that information about the 46% cut. The decision, as you said, was made in 19th of February, the approval of the decision. I've put on record my view that I think there is a lack of public scrutiny and council scrutiny in the process, but I find it difficult with the current arrangements coming down from the centre, how to fit that scrutiny in. And as we look to the future, I would look forward to arrangements where a proper scrutiny process was possible. I can't see how it could have been fitted in now. And Councillor Butler, you touched on an important point, the allocation to individual authorities is not, I want to make this clear, is not done by RCT Council. Again, the allocation is very highly centralised and is done by a group of civil servants in Whitehall. So they have a formula which allocates, in the case of Monmouthshire for next year, Hannah will have the exact figures, about £1 million revenue, £500,000 capital. Those are rounded figures. Those are allocated by a Whitehall formula. And that formula worries me deeply because it gives Monmouthshire about 50% less than any other local authority in Wales. And that was true. This is not due to a change of government this last year. This was true under the previous regime as well. So the formula, I think itself develops scrutiny, and I think when we get the delegation of responsibility to Welsh Government, as well as looking at the arrangements, we should be looking at the allocations within Wales in some detail as well. Hannah, if you figures.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. So the allocation for 25-26 contained in the Cabinet report is 2,399,940, of which 1,734,000 revenue and 665 capital. I just wanted to add in terms of that allocation piece, so each individual authority across the UK have their allocation. In Wales, we're part of the South East region and made up of 10 authorities, and RCT is our lead. Wales is split into 3 regional authorities for their allocation of SPF. I think it's set up slightly differently in England.
Great. Are you satisfied with that amount of information, Councillor Butler?
Thank you very much. Yes, there's quite a lot to take in there. Very, very disturbed, really, by the way how centralised this process is. My understanding is, but perhaps you can clarify this, somebody can clarify this for me, that the split between the centralised Whitehall government and Welsh government has also changed. So there's more of it will be coming from Whitehall and less of it will be coming from Wales. In Wales, is there also a similar formula? You know, we know how much we struggle in terms of our budget in being on the bottom of the pile. Are we on the bottom of the pile for this fund as well, as regards to the Welsh element of the funding? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So I guess just for the committee's clarity, and this is a UK government funding stream. So this money comes from Westminster. It comes through to the lead authorities. As Paul has said and Hannah has said, the allocations are determined by UK government to each local authority. So there's no Welsh government investment in UK SPF. I think what Councillor Griffiths was alluding to earlier was that in the next round of secession funding post-Brexit, it is likely that there will be a greater role for Welsh Government to play in its administration and spending decisions. So that's the point at which we need that greater sense of clarity and local level accessibility and ownership over where the spend is. So that's the point. So the money is coming directly from Westminster to the local authorities. There is no Welsh Government investment in this.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that what's planned to happen in the next year, though? Is Welsh Government coming in then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that will come in the next round of whatever the succession funding is, but we don't know what that will be as yet.
That's obviously something that I read. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. I suffer with the same problem that Councillor Butler has, is having made lots of notes, trying to put them in some sort of cohesive order. Okay, you, Chair, have said we need to put things on the forward work programme, and that perhaps if we had done so, we wouldn't be here today. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily that we wouldn't be here today, although perhaps we wouldn't, but that we had a collective responsibility perhaps to have picked this up in advance and put this on a forward work programme, but we all missed it.
Okay. It's just that I'm fully aware that I put something once on a work programme that took 8 months to come to scrutiny. So it feels to me that what we are doing to some extent here is scrutinising scrutiny process. So I personally think that all areas of public spending, certainly large ticket items, should be discussed at scrutiny, and I'm wondering how we are going to fit all that in. Councillor Griffiths has said that there was a ridiculous haste in decision making. There was also a ridiculous haste and difficulties put on those bringing this forward to scrutiny call-in, and that haste may have constrained what they were allowed to bring forward at this meeting. So what I'm saying is there sufficient transparency? And I would draw attention to what Councillor John put in the local press last week about consultation. And my final words, are large sums of public money being spent in haste by an autocratic decision process, possibly by one cabinet member? And if so, how do we go about changing this? Thank you.
I think I've already given my view that the process is not as it should be. It is too hasty. It is not sufficiently transparent. The whole concept of decision-taking is not by an individual cabinet member. It is by a board, and the accountability of that, local accountability of that board, is not allowed for in the arrangements put in place by the UK government. I've already given my view that we could and should do things better, and we've got to have an urgent debate in Wales about how to do it better.
If I could just add a little bit, Councillor Riley, if that would be okay. I think what Councillor Griffiths has alluded to is the challenges where these relationships exist between the lead authority and UK government, and the extremely condensed timeline that we had to work within this year in particular, and the fact that it was, in some ways, and if we look back to last summer in our considerations, we didn't know whether SPF would continue at all. So, you know, this has been a series of a period of significant work and concern for officers. What I would say is that it certainly hasn't, I hope Councillor Griffiths won't mind me saying this, this hasn't been a piece of work simply by one elected member, and the work of the People and Partnerships Board, which brings together a series of colleagues from a wide range of public service organisations, has been important in working those things through. You would expect the Cabinet member to be sat here with us this morning in the call-in process, but it's gone through a proper board process of consideration within the People and Partnership Board, and it's then been taken to a full Cabinet meeting to allow that transparency of the decision. So that work has been undertaken in a kind of collegiate and partnership way with colleagues.
Thank you. Is that sufficient information, Councillor Riley, or do you want to come back?
I'd just like to add one question to that, is that will we expect, and maybe as councillors we need to be bringing things to scrutiny more than, as you've alluded to, does this mean that there will be more consultation and there will be less autocratic decision making?
My answer is only if we manage to influence Welsh Government to put the right arrangements in place. If they put the wrong arrangements in place, we will operate something we're dissatisfied with.
I was thinking about other matters as well, including possibly the purchasing of properties, etc. Large sums of public money, generally.
If I can answer that, do you mind? Again, I kind of come back to it is not the responsibility of officers nor cabinet members to direct us as backbenchers in what we choose to bring to scrutiny. All of us have access to, say, the cabinet's planner or forward work programme. All of us have an equal ability to say, I would like to bring this to scrutiny, I would like this put on a forward work programme. And that really is, it's not the responsibility solely of scrutiny chairs either. I think, you know, this is a mechanism open and available to all of us. We could have identified this earlier. No one of us chose to pick this up earlier, this particular issue. And that applies to you, as you've referenced, other projects, other large spends. The onus is on us to bring these to scrutiny and put them on the forward programme if we want to examine them, but that is our responsibility.
And I would draw your attention to the one matter I mentioned earlier that took 8 months. And I'm saying if there is a haste being drawn to our attention here, then we are a little bit full, and maybe, as I said, we need to look at the scrutiny process, and maybe we need to have more scrutiny meetings. Okay,
that's entirely possible. Yeah, that's entirely possible, Councillor Riley. That's probably not within the scope of this call-in, but yes, we can look at that in the future. The process of the processes. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much for all the information you've given us today, Paul and Will and Hannah. It's just a simple question. It might seem a silly question, but how is it decided that Randalcan and Taff should be the lead authority in our area?
Not a silly question, but I don't know the answer. Does anyone?
I think in the beginning there was a call out across authorities, probably at chief exec level, and it was agreed that RCT would take the lead. I'm not 100%, but I would imagine, Councillor Powell, that's what happened.
Thank you very much.
Anything else, Councillor Powell? No. Councillor Jones, Penny Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And mine is more of a comment, really, than a question. And it's just, sorry, frog in my throat. Councillor Griffiths has clarified the procedures and the processes to date and emphasised the need for the Cabinet's decision to go forward in light of the effect the decision will have on employees, where projects might either fold or progress. I mean, this, I think we have to take into account when we consider how we are going forward at the end of this meeting. Hopefully, accountability will be examined, and the role of the LAs expanded in future, allowing us to scrutinise with meaning, because that has been lacking to date. So that we've some ownership over projects remaining, ones remaining, and those going forward. So that's really what I've got to say. I think we must take into account at this stage that there have been, it's not a good process as a whole, but we must take into consideration the employees that are going to be affected by it. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Peter Strong.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up on some of the points that have been made in the meeting. I mean, it seems to me that it's only Councillor Howarth who has raised issues from the three who made the call in. He's the only one that's made what are really relevant points. I think it would be instructive to sort of look back 3 years and to think about what call-in is. I mean, call-in really, we're calling in a cabinet decision. And call-in normally happens when councillors feel that the cabinet has not acted or may not have acted in the best interests of the citizens of Monmouthshire. Yep. If we go back to 2022, when Shared Prosperity Fund was first discussed by cabinet, I looked at the recording, and I see there that neither of the opposition group leaders raised any concerns about how the cabinet had acted. There were some questions about mechanisms or rest of it, but nobody raised any concerns about how the cabinet was acted. Richard John raised a couple of interesting questions, but not really concerns. Councillor Taylor had nothing to say. Subsequent to that, not a single councillor raised any concerns that the cabinet had acted other than in the best interests of Monmouthshire on this matter. We come to 2025, the cabinet meeting in February. Interestingly, the process is exactly the same. I think officers were very grateful for the copy and paste facility on Microsoft Word in order to write the papers. The process was exactly the same. And once again, not a single group leader raised any concerns that the cabinet may not have acted in the best interests of Monmouthshire. And much of what is being discussed today is not particularly relevant because it's raising issues that are above our pay grade, so to speak. Yeah. We're trying to scrutinise the Regional Partnership Board. We're trying to scrutinise Westminster. Those things are not in our power. We can make our feelings felt, but that is not really what a call-in is about. A call-in is about dealing with cabinet. Now, the chair has quite rightly pointed out that this meeting is not dominantly about TogetherWorks. But I would just like a quick opportunity to make it clear that I want to see TogetherWorks. I think everybody here wants to see TogetherWorks continuing, but we want to see it on a sustainable basis. There are claims that have been made about TogetherWorks today, which I think are in need of scrutiny themselves, and I would be very happy to be involved in a detailed discussion of how TogetherWorks is run and what its future is. But none of that really is relevant to call in, and you know, really this is not the best process. Let's get it quickly onto the other scrutiny committees that regard it as relevant and deal with it in a more appropriate way there. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's hang on a second. Thank you, Councillor Strong. Councillor Bond, I see your hands next on this, but because you don't sit on People Committee, the process is that I come back to you after other committee members. Thank you. Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of sort of questions to raise. I've heard that of the projects that were funded last year, I just want to sort of clarify, were they aware that the funds could possibly just stop, you know, at the end of March? Or were they or did they all have an exit plan for all of those projects as to what would happen if they were no longer funded? I mean, that's my sort of first thing. And then I want to just go and just sort of back up what Councillor Jones and the other Councillor Strong said about, our responsibility as part of this scrutiny committee. There are a lot of MCC employees that are going to be in limbo if we do not accept the decision of the cabinet member. If we, as a committee, decide to either send it back to cabinet or send it to full council, all of those employees will not know whether their jobs are safe. And I think that we as a committee really need to reflect and think hard about which of the 3 decisions we are going to come up with. So thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Strong. In terms of the awareness, in terms of the current round of funding, all projects were fully aware of the time frames of the funding through discussions we have regularly with the projects, and we bring the projects together collectively on a regular basis. We always encourage those to look at exit plans, because obviously it is very much a time-funded period. Does that answer the first part of your question?
Thank you, yeah.
Councillor Howarth.
Is there anybody to speak before me, Chair? I thought you was taking committee members, and then I'm coming as a committee member now, not as
You are a committee member, so that's why I came to you.
So I get a double whammy. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah, well done. I thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I think explanation of where we were and what we've had in the last few months is valuable, and it would have been actually nice to have that prior. But there you go, we are where we are. I won't die in a ditch over that one. Yes, it's not good, Chair. It's not a good process. It's a very poor process. There's a massive amount of money here, and I'm dismayed that actually this is how it operates. With what's going on out there within our nation, it isn't good, and I don't think this is the best way to carry on in doing what we're doing there. And it isn't fair as well. I think fairness has to come into it with our communities within Wales. So yeah, I'm pleased to hear that hopefully we'll try and address this in the near future. So we are with the call-in. I've got to question the document that we received, which I am being informed that there is some complexities in it where it may step over into grey areas of confidentiality. But we were sent the document, and that document is based on the applications which were previous in 24-25 and now have progressed to 25-26. I have to question some of them projects, Chair, and that's why scrutiny would have actually would we have had a better picture than we have now if we've been scrutinising something during the months where we didn't know where we were going? Am I right in saying that, or am I gobbledygooch in what I'm saying? Is because it's been very clear from Councillor Griffiths, actually, we didn't know where we were going until November, December. What would we have had to scrutinise? And I think that's where it comes to me now. That is the most valuable piece of information I've picked up from today. From that then, from November to last week, the gate opened, the penny dropped. We've got applications here. We can't take no more applications because we haven't been able to do that. But the applications we have, we're going to have to work with what we've got, whether their business case, in brackets, is good or their business case is bad. I've got to say, looking at some of that document I viewed last night, I've got to say, we ain't got it right. I'm sorry to say that, officers, that some of them applications aren't within the remit I believe that we should have gone forward with, and there are applications which I believe should have been awarded a better fund than what we've done with our application down to the board. That's all I want to say on it. I think that document's very valuable for members to get hold of and have a look. I will not take the criticism of a call-in that it would affect people's jobs and livelihoods. There's people out there are going to lose jobs in the next 6 months. There's many thousands of people going to lose their jobs in the next 12 months. You know what I mean? We didn't call it in for that reason. We've called it in because of openness and transparency. And when I had the information, I was more pleased I called it in for that reason. I think that was really important that members were comfortable with the call-in. I think this is not being disrespectful, but I believe what I've heard today now, I think there's been a bit of pressure put on people as well within this chamber, and I don't agree with that. Of what's been going on out there. I didn't have that before I came in here, but I've got that feeling now from what I'm hearing. I believe the call-in was justified. I believe in the call-in is correct. I believe in what's been said in here this morning is correct. I respect my cabinet member for being honest with us today. I'm glad he's come here today, because what I've learned, and many members have learned online and here today, is what we wanted to hear prior. So I respect you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I respect the officers for coming here as well. On the last minute to put a package together to deliver all that money is virtually nearly impossible. So, not that I agree with it all, but your hands were tied. So I will offer my friendship on that respect, but I don't agree with some of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. The initial project proposal and where projects are within their life cycle. I also note in the integrated impact assessment document, though, that we have the People and Place Partnership will support the SPF management team to monitor project delivery, measuring impact and performance, and that's in the document 7 times. So I wonder to what extent that actually does cover off assessment of the realisation of benefits, and whether you could give me a little more detail about how that works.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So yes, contained in the impact, the integrated impact assessment, as you said, the partnership meet on a regular basis, and part of the work of the partnership is to look at the impact in terms of the delivery of the current projects, in terms of their financial profile and their performance to date, and looking at the insightful information in terms of the journey of those projects and the impact those projects have on our communities, businesses and people in Monmouthshire.
If I can just add, so I think it's an important point that's raised, and I've reflected on it. The submission of the business cases by the projects in December specifically requested information on the impact assessment of different levels of funding. So information was received by the board, information was considered on the impact of funding at this level or at that level. What I'm willing to accept, and I take personal responsibility for it, is that we could have more fully reflected that information in the public cabinet paper. And I would like to learn from that reflection. So there was information there. I don't think the public or this committee should have the impression that there was not consideration given of impact. I believe there was, but I don't think the Cabinet paper fully reflected that consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any other members of People Scrutiny Committee wish to speak? No? Before I come back to you, members who signed the call-in, I just need to make it clear that this isn't like a motion at council, so I'm not inviting like a big speech and right to reply. These are just further or supplementary questions. And so to you, please, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. So, thank you, Cabinet and officers, for responding to all these questions, and thank you for saying that this process was difficult and needs improving. That's really good to hear. Can I check, please, that 6 of the people on the partnership board are MCC employees, and therefore the majority to make the decisions? Have I got that incorrect, possibly? Or are they just to check incomplete or incorrect information about all projects? So was it checked by members of the partnership? Thank you. First question. Second question, please can I ask why, for example, we're sending Monmouthshire residents money out of county to, for example, Hartbury, when we have farmer training facilities in Usk? So that's one of the projects that's continuing. And thirdly, back to the question, the call-in about integrated risk assessment, impact assessment. Please can we check that the scrutiny, with the scrutiny officer, about the use of integrated impact assessments? Are they to assess the impact of change or proposal, not just the current projects, as was just mentioned by Officer Jones, that we continue to monitor projects as they're progressing, but as in the impact assessment, we should be looking at the impact of ceasing projects and where they are in their life cycle, and have they realised the benefits that they were purported at the beginning of the project. So I can go back to my example, which was impact was high but performance was low according to the assessment, but we know that that was incorrect, so the incorrect decision was made. And going back, I'd urge the committee to support the Cabinet acceptance with those recommendations that we've already said. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillors Easton or Howarth, would you like to come in with any further questions?
I'll just come in. I support the direction that Councillor Bond has just made. As I said earlier, I would have liked to speak about exempt information, so I wasn't able to do that. So that's just my comment. I support this going back to support accepting the Cabinet. Sorry, I can't speak properly. Because support the position the Cabinet made and move forward. I'm sorry, I can't speak properly. I'm happy with the way the discussion has gone this morning. It has opened some eyes on how scrutiny of these projects should go forward. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Howe?
Yes, Chairman, I just want to question Councillor Easton's note there on if he believes that it's beneficial for we as a committee, which he's not part of, he's got information to go into closed session. It's quite simple. We just take the recording off and we go into closed session. Are you happy with that? I'm happy with that. If he's got information relevant, I'd be happy to go into closed session as a committee member. That's open and transparency for us.
I'm just checking something, Councillor. I'll come back to you on that in a second. All right, councillors, while I just consider this and take some advice, I'm just going to give us a 10-minute break, sorry, and then we will come back.
Chair.
Apologies, but I do need a bit of guidance.
Chair, could I have answers to my questions then as well, please?
Of course, sorry.
Thank you.
You're going to have to be quick, Chair. I got an appointment at 12 o'clock. Can you hear him, Peter?
No, I can't hear anything. Can anybody else?
No, I
Yeah,
can't.
we can now. Can now.
You?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh,
Penny, can you hear me now?
yeah, can.
You can.
Now.
Lovely. Right. I won't repeat the first part of that because it's something we'll basically revisit a part of the summing up at the end. But I'm just saying that having taken advice, I am satisfied that moving into a closed session is not really the right course of action at this point. And I'm going to hand over to Peter Davies just to explain why.
Okay, thank you. No problem.
Good morning, members. For the benefit of the public, Peter Davis, Acting Chief Executive. Just to confirm, I've not been present for the scrutiny session to this point, but I've just been brought up to speed in terms of where the conversation has just got itself to. I think one of the members of the committee has a desire or suggestion to move into closed session in order to allow some of the wider and further detail of the projects that I think has been shared as background information ahead of the meeting to be further discussed. I think my advice is quite clear here, and as you sort of captured there with your sort of broader input, Chair. I don't think it would be a particularly good look in order to move into closed session. I think if we first off look at the very nature of the call-in terms of one around transparency and scrutiny. So I think that wouldn't be a particularly good look. But regardless of that fact, I think it would be a case of you straying quite away outside of the scope of the call-in itself. My understanding as well, through I think what's been a constructive discussion and debate, scrutiny today, I think there is the offer, and I think the intent to take up an opportunity with the Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee, and at a point to be agreed in the near future for that opportunity, I think, to look at the broader programme of the SPF and the criteria and the projects that have either made their way into the programme or otherwise. So I think given that very fact, there will be that opportunity for that further scrutiny then and there. But I come back to my originating point, and I guess the grounds that I'm providing here for not moving into a closed session, it wouldn't be appropriate for the reasons I've given.
Great, thank you for that explanation, much appreciated.
Chair, that was my reason or my suggestion that we went in the closed committee, because a member, not of the committee, of the call-in, it wasn't the committee member, it was a member of the call-in, had information he felt from the documents supplied reference to the call-in. Them documents were supplied reference to the call-in. They were requested. After viewing them documents, which were requested, the members on 2 occasions requested today he had information from them documents he felt he needed to discuss. Correct? So
Councillor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm just giving reason why then I requested it as a member of the committee.
I do appreciate your reasons, Councillor, but my decision on this stands, and I think our Acting Chief Exec has given us a very sound explanation as to why. As I think we have, I feel like there's a general consensus that it would be useful for us to explore this in further detail at a future scrutiny meeting. I think we will speak to Councillor Neil and request that it could be a joint scrutiny meeting so that we all have the opportunity to explore this in detail, in depth further, but at a more suitable time and place than now. Because as I've said, the call-in is very tight, the remit is very close, is very specific. And I think we would be at risk of wandering, straying, digressing from the reason that we are here this morning. Is that okay? I know you don't necessarily agree with me, but that's where we are, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, but what I'm not comfortable is a member keeps requesting he's got information there he'd like to discuss within the call-in, which is confidential.
Indeed,
That's the only reason.
answer...
If he had not said that, I wouldn't even be discussing it.
Fine. Yeah, no, I understand that, but I can discuss that with him if he wishes, but I feel like he will be satisfied with the reasons not to do so. Is that correct? I think...
He has his hand up. Perhaps we should hear from him.
Okay, Councillor Eason?
Yeah, thank you. I accept the Acting Chief Executive's decision on this, but the matters I would like to have raised, I would like to raise privately, or perhaps at the right stage, it might be available to be discussed at the joint, I'm assuming the joint select committee meeting, so that the papers we've been given are either cleared or not cleared. At the moment, I had a pile of papers. I assumed they were all available to the public. It's difficult to say what are and what aren't, so perhaps that could be decided so that we know where we're going in the future. It's not going to change. It's not going to change today's the outcome, which I think should be the right one today, but it might give some guidance of how we deal with these matters in the future. Okay.
Oh, man. Thank you, Councillor Eason. Councillor Bond, I know you were awaiting answers to the questions you asked, because we've had a bit of a, we've wandered down a different path. So do you want to ask them again, just so that people are reminded? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I thank the Cabinet Member for saying, and the officers, but also for saying that this process was difficult and needs improving. So I thanked him. Also, I asked, have I got this correct, that the UK government allocate the funding, it goes to Rhondda and TAF, they hold the money, then it gets sent out to the different local authorities, and then 6 of the 11 people on our People and Place Partnership Board make the decision about which projects go forward, because 6 of the 11 are, all of the 11, but 6 are MCC employees, so they check the information's complete, it's correct, and about all the projects, and not, so they're the ones that make the decisions, because I think there was a bit confusing earlier, that as if there's another board, but the board is 11 members, 6 of which are MCC people, so I understand. That's the first question. Second one was, can I ask why, for example, we're sending Monmouthshire residents money out of county to Hartpury when we have farmer training facilities in Usk? And the third one was, please can we check with the scrutiny officer about the use of integrated impact assessments? Are they to assess the impact of the change or proposal or project? Because it was just mentioned that the current projects are monitored and that's put into the integrated impact assessment, that's just project management. So where are the ceased projects and the impact on the ceased projects in the integrated impact assessment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond, for your questions. If I take the first question, as you'll see in the Cabinet report, it outlines the organisations and membership of the People and Place Board for the SPF, of which there are 3 MCC representatives. There are others at the board meeting in terms of supporting the minutes and the papers, but not in terms of the decision-making process. So I'm sorry if there's been a bit of confusion there. The second question around, did you ask a question on Hartpury as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to pick that one up. The process has been that there are criteria, broad criteria set by UK government of projects that can be funded. At various stages, not at the most recent, but at various stages, the Partnership Board has invited organisations to bid to provide a service in Monmouthshire against those criteria. Various organisations have bid in the past and have been funded in the past to provide business support. I recall an organisation based in Newport that provided a business support service previously. That's not continuing. If the service needs to be provided in Monmouthshire, but if you like, and I think this is a sensible principle to continue with, it does not have to be provided by an organisation in Monmouthshire. So there was only one bid to provide business support to agricultural businesses. If there was an organisation within Monmouthshire that had the skills to do that, it did not bid. I am perfectly at ease that if an organisation in Gloucestershire has the capacity to provide business support to businesses in Monmouthshire, that should be considered on an equal playing field with any organisation within Monmouthshire. I do not think we should have, if you like, hard borders around the county. The important criteria is that it benefits people in Monmouthshire. If the provider has a base outside Monmouthshire, it seems to me that that is neither here nor there. The reference again made to impact assessments, I've already said that I believe that the Partnership Board, with all the constraints of timing, had access to information on impact assessments. And I've already said that I think the Cabinet report could have given a fuller reflection of that information, particularly in regards to those projects for which funding was being reduced or ceasing. So I think we can learn from that.
Chair. So my question, thank you very much. So I didn't know how many, I got that 3 members were MCC, but not how many in total were on the board, but thank you for that. And the integrated impact assessment, I asked the scrutiny chair, officer, if the scrutiny officer could explain what integrated impact assessments are for, please. No.
Yeah, it's not really procedure to question me at the meeting. I wasn't quite prepared for that, but okay. I've got to be honest. The impact assessments are undertaken for all decisions and policies that are brought forward for decision. I don't know if you've covered any points off about the impact assessment, Han, because you met with Hazel, didn't you? Are there any sort of concluding points that were drawn out of that conversation?
Thank you, Hazel. I did meet with a colleague in the authority to look at before the call in to get some advice, and I reflected on the good question. Obviously, the impact assessment was written, as you said, around those projects we had taken forward in the draft local investment plan. The whole assessment appraisal process that Councillor Griffiths has talked to this morning, all projects assessments were based on impact. But I understand the questioning around those projects which are not going forward. We have amended the impact assessment since the decision on Together Works, and that has been updated, as has our local investment plan, which is in the Cabinet documents. Going forward, as we've said, there has been a significant cut in the funding, and it's framed around those projects that have secured funding depending on Cabinet decision in having a positive impact across the authority, across those protected characteristics, our long-term goals, and the challenge of the partnership in enabling that to happen. Sorry, can I just say, just a line in there to say that
obviously cease projects, because IIA for me is, well, I'm not an expert, obviously. My understanding was it's for the proposal. The proposal includes those carrying on and those ceasing. So therefore, even just a line in there to say this will have cease projects will be affected, but it'll be looked at separately, and mitigation if required, that sort of thing. So it's actually in there.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Yeah,
sorry.
On board. No, thank you.
Chair, I did put my hand up. Thank you, Chair. Just on light of a response to one of the questions put before the Cabinet member there, what we're saying is then the Hartpury application was successful on funding because the college within Monmouthshire didn't apply. Hang on, I'm finishing. Didn't apply. The reasons you've told us that the applications or the process for applications was so short this time that any new applications weren't possible. So what we're saying is then that if the applicant had applied, he wouldn't have been successful anyway. Would that be right? Right, okay. I just need to be clear here, because I've had a couple of contacts made to me in the since we did the call-in, saying where was the process for applying anyway, which is quite right. We've said it virtually impossible really to tick the boxes. But the applicant in Monmouthshire who could have applied wouldn't have had a chance anyway, would he? No. No, sir. Am I right in saying that, Councillor Griffiths? So if he would have applied, or they would have applied, they wouldn't have had a chance anyway of having any of the funds. So what you're saying then is, to continue continuity, it was felt best that the college in England was given the benefit of the doubt, and we would award that. We would award them some funds. Is that what we're saying here? Okay, thank you.
The last time that organisations were invited to seek funding, invited to bid to provide a service, was back in 2022. The only organisation that offered to provide support for businesses, farming businesses in 22, was the college in Gloucestershire. I'm just very wary about specifying individual providers in this sort of domain. The reason that it was successful for continued funding was simply because the evaluation indicated that farming businesses in Monmouthshire had benefited from the service. The service had been a good service. It was a service received in Monmouthshire. If any other provider had offered to provide a service, business support to farming businesses, then that would have been considered alongside the bid from the one in Gloucestershire. And the judgment would have been, would we benefit from having two providers rather than one? Is this provider preferable to that provider? That decision has not had to be made because no other bid has been made. Now, if you're telling me that there is someone in Monmouthshire who would, in the recent past, not going back to 22, have bid in a more open process, I take that on board, and it reconfirms my view that looking forward, we must make sure that there is time available for a more open bidding process.
Yeah,
but I must stress that the provider was deemed to be providing a valuable service in Monmouthshire, and that's why the funding was agreed to continue.
I don't disagree with that, because there are many establishments offering that kind of services within other parts of the nations of the UK, just as good and probably even better, who knows. But my point I'm making is if there are establishments within Monmouthshire or the outer regions of Wales, let's say, they wouldn't have had an opportunity anyway, would they, with the formula that is being used for applications, which we've said we didn't know till November, December, actually a way forward. So if I'd have banged on the door as an individual and said, I can offer this and offer that just as good as any other, you would have turned the other way anyway, wouldn't you? Because there wouldn't have been enough time to... I'm just trying to get a point here, because somebody bangs on our door next week and says, hang on a minute here, what's going on? I need a reason in my head as a corporate responsibility individual representing Monmouthshire that we have ticked the boxes here. Are you confident that we've ticked the boxes, making sure that we covered every angle, awarding an establishment in England part of our allocation of Monmouthshire's money? Thank you.
Yes, I think they appear to be satisfied, Councillor. General nodding. Councillors, I don't see any other hands up or any other requests to speak. So my feeling at this point is there is a broad consensus amongst people present that we are not entirely happy with the process, but that the process of the Shared Prosperity Fund is not in our hands as a local authority. I'm seeing some nods, yes, good. And that where this warrants further examination, that can be done at a future scrutiny committee, which will be arranged through performance and overview, and hopefully in conjunction with us as People Committee. So, is anybody unhappy with that summary? Would anybody like to add anything? No? Paul, officers, would you like to add anything at this point? No? Right, so now we have three options, councillors. Firstly, we can accept the Cabinet's decision. Secondly, we can refer the matter back to Cabinet for reconsideration if we give reasons for that. Or we can refer the matter back to full council for consideration. Yep, so Hazel's just going to go through the roll call with it.
Right. Councillor Butler.
You're on mute.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you just be clear what we're voting on? What were the two choices?
Okay. So we're now at the point where we consider the way forward. So it's committee members only that can vote on the options going forward. Number one, you accept the Cabinet decision. Number two, you refer the decision to Cabinet member with reasons. Or number three, refer to full council. So I'll go through everybody in turn, but can you just say whether you accept the Cabinet decision, whether you want to refer it back to the Cabinet member or refer to full council? So we'll start with you, Councillor Butler.
To give a reason why I'm saying this, I am concerned really about the people whose jobs are dependent on this. So on that basis, I would say that we accept the decision.
Councillor Edwards, please.
We accept the decision.
Okay. Councillor Howarth.
I move the decision, Chair.
So you're accepting, Councillor Howarth? Okay. Councillor Penny-Jones.
I accept the decision.
Councillor Maureen Powell.
I accept the decision.
Councillor Jackie Strong.
I too accept the decision and also concur with Councillor Butler.
Okay. Councillor Peter Strong.
Accept the decision.
Councillor Sue Riley.
Accept the decision.
Okay, and Councillor Laura Wright.
Accept the decision.
Chair, is that the meeting closed?
It is, Councillor. I was just writing down the date of the next meeting to tell you all. So yeah, thank you everybody for your patience and understanding during this rather detailed but thorough meeting. So we are done for today, and our next meeting will be on the 2nd of April. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.